This sound again is a very, very French sound, I think, because it is a sound that stands out when you listen to French native speakers talking. And this is a really nothing sound. I think of this as a nothing sound, almost like it's not there, but then it's such an important sound in the whole language. And this sound is just No more sound to it than just But what you see with French people when they make this sound is they tend to make that shape of their mouth into a pout. And that's where we can recognise someone all the way down the street and say, is that person French? Because it looks like they're speaking French. That comes from this sound when they say and they bring their lips right forward and their jaw almost up a little bit, their bottom lip up a little bit. So try having a little pout. Imagine if you were sulking about something. Have a look in the mirror, see what it looks like, and make the sound Let's have a look at a few words that have that sound, and there are so many. Je, de, le, veux, je veux, peux, regarder, devant, prenons. Let's do those again. Je, de, le, veux, peux, regarder, devant, prenons. And the sorts of things that we would see mistakes with might be something like prenons, where we are as English speakers, or maybe many speakers of French as a second language, would be inclined to say prénom. And we want to be careful with the E sound, pre, and also the nasal on, which we've already looked at. Prenons. Here we've got the E, and we've got the open, easy, relaxed sound, devant. Okay, here we've got regarder. So there's a sharp sound. We'll look at that soon. And there it is, that sharp sound. Very sharp. Keep it really short. This is actually quite a hard sound for us to differentiate from a more open sound. So this one's the one to focus on, the one that would come less naturally to us. So the sharper it is and the shorter it is, the more likely it is to sound as close to correct as possible. So the sound is very, very short, Actually, if you smile, if you pull your lips right back into a smile, it'll help get that sound even closer to what you want it to sound like. So smile, pull your lips right back and up. Let's have a look at some words. Café, thé, lait, mais, jouer, tomber, et. So we can see we've got an infinitive with an ER with the same sound as a past tense, a past participle, the same as the word for is and the word for and. So this is a little bit of a tricky sound, not for the sound but for the meaning in French. Let's go through those words again. Café, thé, lait, mais, jouer, tomber, et. And now let's try contrasting that with a sound that almost sounds exactly the same, and this is the hardest one for us who are not French native speakers, is to differentiate between this short, sharp sound and the next one, which is eh. So rather than short and sharp, it's longer and more open. Eh. Mère, mère, faire, mais, très, père, vers, vers. So we start to see again lots of words with that same sound but are spelt differently and have different meanings. Mère, mother, and mer, the sea, the ocean. Vert, glass. Vert, the colour green. Let's hear those words one more time. Mère, mère, faire, mais, très, père, vers, vers. And to practice the two together, try a word like c'est, vers, c'est, vers. And if you practice that word, it can be a bit of an indicator to you when you're practicing those two sounds. Short and sharp, long and open. C'est, vers, c'est, vers. Now let's look at a bit of a tricky sound next. The R sound in French. R, to say the letter of the alphabet, R, and the sound is R. The hardest way to try and say this sound is with no other sounds around it to just produce the R sound, so actually it's easy to practice within words. People have lots of stories about gargling water so you can feel the spot at the back of your throat, or trying to spit so you can feel the spot where you gather the spit at the back of your throat. Those techniques have not worked very well for me, but they do work for some people, so you can try them to see if you can identify where that sound should be coming from. You can try a different technique that other people use to try and figure out, identify where is that sound coming from, because that's the most important thing, in fact. And for English speakers, an R, and that's why it's so hard, uses teeth and lips and tongue. And these three things, when we think about the h sound in French, none of these are used. Our teeth don't move, our lips don't move, our tongue doesn't move. So let's look at a few ways of practicing that for a start. So have a think about these three letters, saying them k, g, h. And just under the chin, so at the top of the throat, if you put your hand there or your fingers there, you can feel a bit of a vibration while you're talking. If you say the letter k, you can feel that vibration quite strongly, k. So you've got your hand just under your chin, at the base of your chin, at the top of your throat, k. If you move it halfway down your throat to where there's a sort of a lump in your throat, you'll be able to feel the letter g. So again, from k, and then move your hand down, g. Hand back up to the top, k, and halfway down, g. If you can visualize that step halfway down the throat that goes from k, g, halfway down, the next step down and further in is the h. And actually, if you put your hand right at the base of your throat where you've got that little hollow, you actually can't feel the vibration anymore if you say the sound h. Only a tiny bit, because it's actually quite a bit further inside the throat. So if you try from the top with your hand touching the top of your throat, k, middle, g, bottom, h. K, g, h. So try and imagine that sound taking steps down your throat until you get right to the bottom. K, g, h. Try it with the sound before it. Ak, ag, ach. Which is a bit easier to say than the sound h on its own. Ak, ag, ach. So let's try that sound with some words. Garçon, pardon, partir, sortir, tourner, regarder, rentrer, français. Okay, there's a little bit of emphasis there. And again, like that that very nasal sound, this is another sound that when you're practicing, best thing to do is emphasize it. Do it over the top. You end up putting it everywhere, even in places that you don't need it. That's the best way to go, and then tone it down a little bit later rather than not use it, because it's such an important sound. Notice that you don't hear it on the end of infinitive verbs, e. Okay, so watch out for that when you're practicing. Let's hear those words again. Garçon, pardon, partir, sortir, tourner, regarder, rentrer, français. And for a sound that has a TR or an FR, they're actually very hard to sound out because we're using our lips and our tongue and our teeth at the front of our mouth and then trying to skip right back down to the back of the throat without moving any other part of our mouth to make the R sound. So they're really hard to put together. So when you're doing the k, g, h, nothing should be moving at all. No lips, no tongue, no teeth, nothing at all in your mouth is actually a part of that sound. So if you can imagine you're a ventriloquist, you're not using your mouth at all, and you say k, g, h, all of those sounds are made without moving anything. That's very hard for an English speaker. We tend to use a lot of lips, teeth, tongue in our sounds. So let's have a look over, again, those sounds that we've already seen. We had the sound oo, the sound u, the sound the sound a, the sound e, h, h. Okay, so let's see a few of those sounds move on the screen and see if you can say the sound before you hear it. Let's try this one. R. Un. Et. U. Ou. Et. And just briefly to almost finish up, having a quick look at a few words that can be confusing because of the sounds that are very difficult for English native speakers to differentiate between. For example, nous, meaning we or us, nu, meaning naked. Don't want to get those two mixed up. Roue, which is a wheel, and rue, which is the street. Roue, rue. The number 12, 12, and the number 2 don't actually sound that similar. 12, 2. They don't really sound all that similar, but when we put the word for year after them and we get the liaison here, which sounds like a Z sound, they actually then have a more similar sound. 12 ans, 2 ans. So then we have to really focus on those sounds. 12, 12 ans, 2 ans. That's our nothing sound, and this one's our open sound with a little bit more effort involved. 12 ans, 2 ans. Son, meaning sound or meaning his or her. Sans, without, quite different meanings. Fait, a fairy. Fait, to do or to have done something. Fait, fait. And lastly, a little test that you can do for yourself. So you can pause here and have a go and then have a listen, or listen first, pause and have a go and see how you go. So a few sounds to listen out for. Ma mère est très sévère. So we've got an open E, another open E, and another open E. R, E. And then we've got a sharper E, E. And our sound is very open in French as well. Ma. They really open their mouth quite wide. Ma mère est très sévère. Have a go at that one. Let's try another one. Pendant les vacances, je suis allée en France. We can hear a little liaison there, which is a Z sound. Pendant les vacances, je suis allée en France. So we've got lots of those easy open sounds. They shouldn't be too challenging. Pendant, vacances, en France. There's a hard sound there, France. Okay, pendant les vacances, je suis allée en France. We've got a sharp E here. Pendant les vacances, je suis allée en France. Let's try the next one. Nous avons bu tout le vin. Some interesting sounds there. Ou, open. Tout, open. Avons, very nasal. Vin, very nasal. And a sharp U sound. And now nothing, E. Nous avons bu tout le vin. One last time. Nous avons bu tout le vin. Nous avons bu tout le vin. And a last sentence to practice. Tu as déjà lu tous ces livres? C'est incroyable. You can hear a little liaison there between the T and the vowel. Tu as déjà lu tous ces livres? C'est incroyable. U, sharp. Lu, sharp. We've also got E, sharp sound, and E, sharp sound, and nasal un here, and open ou here, a sharp E here. Let's have a go. Tu as déjà lu tous ces livres? C'est incroyable. One last time. Tu as déjà lu tous ces livres? Tu as déjà lu tous ces livres? C'est incroyable. And so, bonne chance with your pronunciation in French. Hope that helped.